Good morning and welcome to the second annual Student Success Summit. As we begin the spring 2021 semester, we use this opportunity to refocus and refresh our ongoing commitment to NKU's students and their success. This morning's virtual summit will feature several discussions on advancing student success, but we're also taking the opportunity to celebrate the campus community and our perseverance over the past year. NKU is all about care. And today we'll also focus on care as a concept demonstrating creativity, appreciation, resilience, and engagement. The first letter of care represents creativity. The sudden shift to virtual operations in spring of 2020 forced everyone to be more creative in how they did their work. Campus was challenged to shift rapidly to virtual classes, meetings, and events, while still providing support to our students in a difficult environment. Unprecedented times called for creative solutions, and NKU stepped up to the challenge. Even outside of the pandemic, NKU is full of new and creative ways of doing business, engaging students and promoting student success, from our new esports team to TikTok. The second letter of care represents appreciation. Throughout the challenges of the past year, our community has remained dedicated to NKU and our students. From the custodians who keep our facilities clean and safe, to the various essential staff who keep campus running, to the faculty who rework their entire teaching plans to keep their students on track. Expressing our appreciation to each other helps keep our campus community strong, even when we are not physically together. The third letter of care is for resilience. The events of the past year have not been easy, but our campus community has persevered to keep student success at the forefront of all we do. Today's students have faced and continue to experience unique challenges, and NKU's faculty and staff work tirelessly to support them and enable their success, even while dealing with their own challenges. The final letter of care is for engagement. Even in a largely virtual environment, the campus community has come up with new and innovative ways to stay connected with each other, our students, and our community. The care we have for each other will ensure that NKU will emerge stronger and better able to achieve the central mission of student success. And now to kick off today's Student Success Summit, please welcome Dr. Ashish Vaidya, President of Northern Kentucky University.
Good morning and Happy New Year. Welcome back, everyone, whether you're on campus or working and learning remotely. And thank you for all those who are attending this event. I see we have several folks who have joined us, and I'm especially grateful that you've taken some time out on Friday to join us for this special day, our second annual Student Success Summit. I want to thank the panelists and, of course, all those involved in organizing this event. You know, we're all hopeful that the devastating effects of the global pandemic, the wounds of the racial and social injustice that we continue to witness, and the assault on the very foundation of our democracy begin to ebb and begin to heal this year. As we reflect on the past year and gather to mark the beginning of the spring semester, what I'm proud of is how we have not wavered from a focus on our core mission of student success, which is why I'm so pleased that the Student Success Summit is becoming an annual tradition here at NKU. We have certainly come a long way since launching Success by Design, our strategic framework, nearly 2 years ago. And despite the many obstacles we've had to face throughout the past year, we remain on the right path. Just in the past year, we've adopted and begun to implement our first 5 initiatives. In fact, last year's inaugural Student Success Summit and the 2020 Innovation Challenge, can you believe it's been a whole year, gave rise to some amazing projects to create a better student experience. And one of the many inspiring stories from last year's event is our new and highly successful esports program and team. And you'll hear a little bit more about that today. I know that the summit will inspire us to serve current and future students in new and creative ways. But before that, we will talk about a concept that, while new in name, will feel familiar to most of us here at NKU. And Dave Thompson just told you, it's about care. Creativity, appreciation, resiliency, and engagement. None of these concepts are new to us. In fact, NKU has been known for these qualities for over 5 decades. But in the past year, the COVID-19 pandemic, the economic crisis, and a renewed national commitment to equality have truly challenged us and our community. But we have risen to the challenge time and again. So today, we acknowledge and celebrate CARE, and you'll hear several examples of it. Ryan Paget, Assistant Vice President for Enrollment and Student Success, will moderate a panel with a variety of colleagues from across campus to discuss and demonstrate how the NKU family exemplifies the 4 elements of CARE in our everyday work and interactions. I'm also excited to hear from the keynote panel speakers today. And then we close out the summit with our new Vice President for Student Affairs, Dr. Eddie Howard, and SGA President Lauren Goodwin. So as we listen and engage with the panels today, I'd like us to think about the lessons for NKU, especially in a post-COVID world, as we aim to become an even more student-ready university that creates economic and social opportunity for the region and beyond through greater access, strengthening completion, and intentional career success and community engagement. Again, thank you all for being here this morning. Let's begin by listening to our CARE panel. It's my pleasure to introduce Ryan Paget and the CARE panel.
Thank you, President Vidia. I have the honor and privilege to serve as today's moderator for the CARE panel. Luckily, I think I have the easiest job at today's summit, and that's talking as little as possible so that you can hear from the amazing stories and experiences from the exceptional faculty, staff, and our amazing students sitting on this panel. As the president shared, we'll hear from the NKU family and how campus has worked together to advance student success, both inside and outside the classroom during this pandemic. And I'd like to first start talking about the student experience inside the classroom and pose the first question to Abdullah. So Abdullah, as the transition to virtual learning limited the ability to engage and socialize in the traditional kind of college sense, if you will, faculty had to get creative in engaging students in the virtual setting. Can you share how you were able to continue creating that important sense of community in your classes?
Without a doubt, we've faced a lot of adversity over the past 2 semesters. The thing that I love that has come out of this is with adversity, we innovate. And my students have been part of that process throughout. They've communicated, they've told me what they like. So one thing that we've done is work together to create short, engaging video clips. So they've helped me as an educator to define what video content looks like. The other thing that I love is the fact that NKU administrators have also given us the full flexibility to figure out how to solve this problem. One area that we're really struggling with right now and we're working really hard to fix is this experiential learning aspect. So we're seeing students have an issue with gaining internships during this pandemic time. So we've created a program called the Econ Games, which started here at Northern Kentucky University. And it's a way to collaborate with industry. And this year, the Federal Reserve Bank of Cleveland is working with us to help our students learn about data analytics. And the program's been such a success that 18 universities from across the world are participating. So our students get to work with other people. And that's, we could talk about all the challenges, but we could also highlight all the amazing things that have come out of this. And without everybody's flexibility and everybody's willingness to grow, we wouldn't be here, but we're also able to find new ways to engage students and grow together.
Now, you bring up a really good point about experiential learning. And when I think about experiential learning, I can't think of anything more experiential and applied than what Gannon and her team are doing in the faculty preparing students for careers in the healthcare field. And that preparation took on a whole new meaning for upperclassmen and graduates this year. So Gannon, can you talk a little bit about how the College of Health and Human Services collaborated with each other to ensure that new graduates were prepared for working the front lines during this pandemic?
Yeah, Ryan. So it was quite an interesting flip back in March, trying to figure out how to prepare soon-to-be graduates in a virtual world when pretty much every single one of our students got pulled from the clinical area, hospitals, nurse practitioner students. So we had to figure out really quickly how to help them be successful. for our undergraduate students in all of our healthcare programs, working with the Simulation Center, the staff and the director, Gina Filer, there were wonderful in coming up with ways to help keep up their skills as much as possible before graduation and have them ready to go out into the midst of this pandemic and try and be prepared as possible for what they would be facing. The other thing that we did, with our currently working students, so our master's students and our RN to BSN students, in order to ensure that they were able to devote the time that they needed to taking care of their patients, because most of them were working clinically and they're all over the country, we helped them be able to pause their program without being detrimental to them. And that included collaboration, not only within the schools in College of Health and Human Services, but other departments across campus as well, to ensure that students were able to take incompletes, to be successful in their classes, and to continue on in their programs once things settled down a little bit in the fall. So I'd like to give a shout out to biology and math and all the work that we did together to ensure that these students could continue and not have to pay extra for retaking the classes that they were in.
Absolutely. Hearing you say that, it brought me back to a story that actually happened yesterday. We had a student come into UCAP yesterday. It was a nursing student, graduate student, was just having some tech issues and was talking about, wanting to get this done. Had spent all day on campus working through some of her coursework because she was heading to go work a 10 or 12-hour shift later that night because she's currently a nurse. And so everything that she was saying and kind of how it tied back to what you were saying, I keep thinking back up to the R and care about resiliency. So I'd like to actually turn it over to Amy next. And, you and your staff have been working really closely with our students as they're going through, this pandemic and maybe not ideally always wanting to be virtual and some of the causes that may have had on mental health or their well-being. So Amy, can you talk about some of the experiences that you're seeing and what your staff are seeing and how we as a university can continue to enhance and build that support for student resiliency as a campus community?
Yeah, absolutely. So obviously last spring when we had to shift from an in-person model to being primarily obviously online and doing and work by phone, we as our counseling staff and the health staff, we had to transition to telehealth services, which although it's not a new thing, for us, it was a new experience. And my staff, while we were trying to kind of transition from that, they were willing to do what it took to kind of make that transition and stay connected with the student body. What I'll say is since that time, the telehealth has continued to improve. We're currently offering in-person as well as telehealth services, and the students have been so willing to participate in that based on their comfort level. The students have been reaching out to us. We've had a number of students who want to do telehealth for their own safety, or maybe because they're not currently on campus. One of the things that we've noticed, which I think is a huge kind of shout out to our students, is that just in the last semester, we had fewer cancellations and no-shows for appointments. And I guess that shows me that the students are dedicated and they are diligent about wanting to take care of their mental health. Not only that, but I feel like that our staff and our faculty has collaborated together to as a campus to make the mental health a priority of our students. And we've had more staff and faculty reach out to us. This past semester, there was a passing of one of a very beloved professor, and that was a unique opportunity for us to provide support to staff and faculty. And I guess what I'd say is, although we are struggling and things are difficult, I guess I sense a sense of hope and a sense of determination to, hey, we're gonna get through this together, and we're gonna take it one step at a time to ensure kind of that we stay on track. So our staff is doing what we can, and we so appreciate the support of other staff and faculty and our students who are trying to do what they can to stop the stigma against mental health. And we're so appreciative of that.
Absolutely, Amy. And I also want to acknowledge that, your staff was also working over the winter break. There was 24-hour telecounselors throughout that winter break to continue to provide that support for our students virtually. And as you also talked a little bit about, we're obviously supporting students virtually, but we're also continuing to support our students on campus. And so Bill, much of our work over these past few months has been online, but the campus is still open and we've been supporting students on campus throughout this entire time. So can you share some examples of the amazing commitment and dedication your team has continued to display in ensuring the safe return of students, faculty, and staff back here on campus? Oh, Bill, I think you're muted there. There you go.
My apologies. Hey, I love to have an opportunity to brag up our great teams and staff in facilities. These people are very special. As a lot of you guys have been working from home, I'd say the vast majority of, like Ryan said, the vast majority of facilities people have been on campus and doing things to make the campus safe. Some example of a few of those things, and there were hundreds of them actually, but those plexiglass shields you see hanging all over campus in those places where you have to have intimate one-on-one conversations and activities. Our carpenter crew did that. Social distancing of all the furniture in the campus, in all the classrooms, and all the public spaces. Took us quite a few hours to go through every single classroom and do that so that you could go into those classrooms and sit and be automatically socially distanced and safe. Let's tip our hat to the custodial crew. We've gone through and done specialized disinfectants to kill the virus. We've purchased special electrostatic machines that are very efficient and effective against COVID. And our people have just been out there every day keeping you safe when you come into campus. We've actually changed some of our procedures so that we can increase our disinfection rate on those touch points as you walk through a building, the different things that you have to touch to be and operate in the building. We've increased the cleaning and disinfecting of those. We've also done extensive sign placement around campus and the development of those signs, and they reflect the Safe 9 rules to being safe with COVID. And I could go on for hours, but I know my time is short, but facilities is a fantastic group of people who are dedicated to keeping you safe. And I just want to say how proud I am to appreciate them here at NKU.
Yeah, I mean, on behalf of the entire campus community, we want to thank our facility staff because, the ability to come on campus and to continue what we're doing to support student success, they've been leading much of that. And so we greatly appreciate all that they've been doing. I think, Bill, thank you so much for sharing everything that they've been doing so that everyone does know the extent and the hours they've been working to ensure the safety of our students, faculty, and staff. So thank you. I do want to shift some of our conversations to continue around resiliency and engagement. And Mackenzie, you are a participant in the Humans of Greater Cincinnati. I promised early on in this panel, I didn't want to talk too much, but I do want to read a little excerpt about what Humans of Greater Cincinnati is, because it's an amazing project. And I'd love to hear from you and Jennifer about your experiences with that. So NKU Rocks and the Honors College partnered together to pilot the Humans of Greater Cincinnati project as part of a first-year experience that includes more than 50 incoming students. Each student received an iPad to take photographs, shoot videos, and create narratives that capture the human experience during the COVID-19 pandemic, the 2020 election year, and the current climate and social and political protests. Through these activities, students learn the fundamentals of community-based learning and research. So this project really embraced connecting to the community and engaging with others. So Mackenzie, you were able to engage with thousands of people, both regionally and nationally, who you shared your story with and they read it. And so can you share your thoughts on this experience and what you were able to take away from all these people reading about your experience?
Yeah, so in my high school, I felt like I really wasn't heard. I had experiences, there was racially profiling, all these type of racial things going on in my school that I was not happy with. And I never felt like I could really talk about it until I started writing this story about Humans of Greater Cincinnati. And the experience that I've had with it has been completely incredible, to be honest, because I was able to explain something and tell something that I was holding in for a while. And it's reached so many people, which I'm just so thankful for, because even friends of our family have seen it and been I've never heard of like this perspective of this. And it's opened my eyes, and I've realized that like these Black students, they go through things that some other students don't go through. And I think that's just incredible for me to talk about that and be able for like this project has allowed me to be able to explain and understand other people's stories as well. So it was an incredible experience for me, and I absolutely loved it, and I would do it 100 times over again. So yeah.
Well, it's a testament to the power of the student voice. So we were so happy you were able to share your experience, and then have, like you said, so many others get to kind of embrace that and share that as well. And Jennifer, you were also a participant in the Humans of Greater Cincinnati project. And from your perspective, how important was it for you to build that sense of community with Rock students and other students in the program when building the community was something that was quite difficult to do during a pandemic?
Yeah, it's been such a great opportunity for the Rock students to engage with other students on campus. And I've had even testimonies from different students in the project and how they've been able to connect to other people's stories and experiences on campus. And that's like one of the students even described it as raw human connection because she was just so excited to be part of it. And I think also just for them to have their first year be mainly virtual, it's been a great way for them to just feel connected, not only to their story, to the NKU community, but also to the greater Cincinnati region. We've had activities about describing their journey to NKU, or even for us, the staff, describing our journey back to NKU, or even activities to describe or share or highlight the stories of unsung heroes on campus. And now this semester, we are hoping to have activities that can help them connect to individuals in Cincinnati, Newport, Covington, so that we can continue to share the greater Cincinnati story. So it's just been a great collaboration and an amazing way to connect and share stories. So thank you.
And thank you, Jennifer. I would actually like to stay on this conversation of kind of the student experience, and because I think more than ever right now, that sense of community is so imperative for everything that we do, both as a nation, but especially here on campus. And so, Duncan, I want to turn it over to you to talk a little bit about your student experience as well, and that sense of community that you and your team have built with the esports team. So a little behind the scenes for everyone watching in today. When the panel first met to go over the logistics of this panel, Duncan kind of jumped in and shared something very interesting about how they had to create community and engagement. Because Duncan mentioned that even though they are this successful esports team, which we'll talk about here in a second, they've not even met in person as an entire team, yet together the NKU esports team in their inaugural year put together an amazing season that put NKU esports on the map. So Duncan, walk us through, as the coach, building the team and why that was so important to you to make sure that that team was as cohesive as possible and working together.
Well, given the daunting task of exactly what we needed to do by Dean Buss, part of the Honors College, we didn't have much to go on in ways of how to handle the situation with the students all being online. So they were already kind of used to being kind of separated from the reality of like a classroom or like a sit-in setting. We had to find a way to get all of those students put together under one single roof, practically like a virtual roof. Going through this experience was, I would definitely call it different. To have all of these students with different mindsets all want to come together, and we created, like you said, the sense of community and purpose. We created a lot of friendly rivalries with a lot of the Kentucky schools and the Ohio schools, and we had a really great team behind us. So I wouldn't say that it was difficult to accomplish because everyone wanted the same thing, and that was to make this as successful as possible for NKU and the community as a whole. So I don't really have much to speak on about the difficulties of doing so because everyone just had the same mindset. There was no issues there at all.
It's fantastic. And I want to say here, and maybe if the students all could unmute, because we want to make sure we continue this conversation around this experience. So, I mean, obviously the pandemic has created some limitations for us as a university and really as a nation in terms of, like we said, building this sense of community. So can you just share, you've kind of hinted at it and talked a little bit about it through your responses, but how important is it for us as NKU as we continue to come out of this pandemic and then head into a new academic year how important is it that, we make sure from your student success perspective that we have these engagement opportunities for you both virtually and online? And how can we as a university make sure we continue to do so?
I think just most importantly, I feel like the faculty just needs to engage with the students any way they can. Like with the Humans of Greater Cincinnati project, it's reached so many people. And I feel like that's important to hear students' stories and for their stories to be spread around NKU. It's how you interact with them right now, especially with the pandemic. It's like you can't really see each other because everything going on. So it's good to hear stories or for them to write it out or type about it or even talk like over Zoom about their experiences at NKU and how the community has made me especially feel so welcome.
Jennifer, Duncan, anything else to add to that?
Not more on the same topic that Mackenzie brought up. I mean, the faculty has done an absolutely fantastic job of making sure that all the students remain connected and that they have all the resources that they need to be as successful as possible. So I personally want to thank the faculty and staff for doing everything that they've been doing.
Yeah, I would definitely love to second that too. Just really a big thank you. And like Mackenzie said, like we can continue to have raw conversations, just really going beyond the grades and the performance, but really about the story of resilience that we've built and just be able to connect in that way.
Perfect, thank you. And obviously we're at the Student Success Summit, and student success is at the heart of success by design, and everything that we do on this campus is guided to make sure student success is at the forefront of everything we do. So a question I'll pose back then after hearing what the students have said to our faculty and staff. So, you've gone through everything we've gone through these last few months. Any recommendations, thoughts, or just words of wisdom to other faculty and staff as you've had these collective experiences with students to make sure we're continuing to support our students through the rest of spring and then beyond?
I'll jump in here. I think the advice that I could give is we just need to communicate with each other. We need to tell each other that we care. We're all in this together. We're trying to accomplish the same thing, and moving to virtual or in person, all of these uncertainties create fears, and we need to just be empathetic and understand that we're all sharing this experience together. And if we're in it together, then we will get through it together.
Absolutely.
I'd like to add that I think we've learned in this time that flexibility is key. We can have the best laid plans, and everything turns on a dime the next week. So I urge everybody to continue to be flexible with students, to recognize when students are struggling and make the referrals, to Amy's office as necessary, because we know that students are struggling more now than ever, as are a lot of our faculty and staff. So caring is extremely important in these times.
Amy?
Yeah, I was just going to add, as staff and faculty, I think as we support our students, one of the things that we need to be mindful of is really taking care of ourselves. And I know that as I say that, some people might be rolling their eyes at the thought of everything they have going on, but our own self-care, making sure we have connection and community is important too. What I'll say is when we're in a good place, our mental health and our mental wellness is in a steady place or a stable place, then we're able to better assist and provide for our students. And kind of to echo what the students have said, which I love, is, taking the time as staff and as faculty to listen to their story, to hear kind of what they're all about, to make those connections. I think that's so important. And I think that now more than ever, as we are virtual, we need to almost have that intentional time of reaching out and kind of making that connection with our students.
Bill?
I think communication is going to be the key to success for you. If there's things that the facilities folks can do for you, please ask, because a good facilities team loves a challenge. I mean, our problems are our key. Whenever there's a problem, we're pretty skilled at solving those. So if there's something that we can do for you, let us know, and we'll see what we can get done for you. So
Fantastic. And I was writing words down as everybody was talking, and similar to how student success isn't just one thing. Student success is many things. I think when we look at care and supporting one another as a sense of community, words that jumped out to me again were flexibility, compassion, empathy, communication. Those were what was shared just by this panel in just the last 20, 25 minutes. And so when we're really thinking about how we continue to support, each other, faculty, staff, and students, and the community, it really is that care network that is so important, and being empathetic to, everyone's different situation as we continue to work through this pandemic and continue, just as importantly, to support our students. So I want to be mindful of time. We've now reached our time limit. So I would like to thank the panel for their honest conversation and discussion and sharing their experiences. I wish we would have had a little bit more time. I'd love to have dug a little bit deeper and continue to hear our student stories. But I hope everyone on the other side of this computer screen found the same sense of community spirit as I did from hearing from this panel. So panel, again, thank you so much for dedicating your time to everything that you're doing, both inside the classroom, as well as the students who have dedicated their time today away from their studies and other obligations. So panel, again, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you again. Up next is something I'm also very excited about. I've had the good fortune to hear both of the upcoming speakers of our Student Success Keynote panel, and I'm ready to hear some more. So we're going to be hearing from two national leaders in the field of student success. So without further ado, I'd like to turn it over to our interim provost, Andy Durjai, who will be leading our Student Success Keynote panel. So without further ado, Andy.
Thanks for that handoff, Ryan, and also thanks for moderating that wonderful panel of our faculty, staff, and students. As a regionally engaged, student-centered institution, our focus is naturally on student success, as well as our engagement to the region. And so as part of our new strategic plan, President Vaidia has charted a very, very bold course of how we enhance and improve our student success efforts, but also continue to engage the region. And so today we have a real treat. We are fortunate enough to have two national experts with us to discuss both student success and regional engagement, Dr. Bridget Burns and Mrs. Jacqueline Smith. And so I'll read a short bio on both of them, and then we'll dive into the discussion this morning. Dr. Bridget Burns is the Executive Director of the University Innovation Alliance. A trusted advisor to university presidents, Dr. Burns is on a mission to transform the way institutions think and take action on behalf of low income, first generation, and students of color. She serves as the founding executive director of the University Innovation Alliance, a unique consortium of public research universities collaborating to close achievement gaps through testing, scaling, and sharing innovative and successful practices. Named one of the 16 most innovative people in higher education by Washington Monthly Magazine, she has helped the UIA campuses increase low-income graduates by 29% and raise more than $30 million to support student success innovation. The University Innovation Alliance has been highlighted on national outlets like the New York Times, Fast Company, 60 Minutes, and she was also featured on the documentary Unlikely, which we actually screened at NKU. Dr. Burns has served as on her first presidential hiring committee at the age of 22 and has spent the past 2 decades helping to hire, advise, and advocate on behalf of more than 30 presidents and chancellors around the country. She received her doctorate of education from Vanderbilt University in higher education and leadership policy. Mrs. Jacqueline Smith is the vice president of Arizona State University's foundation. Jackie, as I know her, has designed and launched university-wide initiatives at Arizona State since 2009. Most recently, she served as ASU's associate vice president and executive director of university initiatives and advisor to the president for social embeddedness. Jackie is a professor of practice at ASU's Mary Lou Retton Fulton Teachers College, where she focuses on university design, higher education, and the law. She co-authored a chapter in the textbook, The 60-Year Curriculum, New Models for Lifelong Learning in a Digital Economy, which was published in April 2020. In November of 2020, Jackie was elected by the public to serve a 4-year term on the Maricopa Community College District Governing Board, defeating an incumbent by 10 points. MCCD's nationally recognized program helped more than 200,000 students each year achieve their goals. 10 accredited colleges offer a diverse range of programs and locations across the Phoenix metro area. And Jackie is a 2-time graduate of Georgetown University with her bachelor's degree and her law degree. So at this point, we'll go ahead and get started with the conversation. Jackie and Bridget, I appreciate you both being up with us this morning. I have to tell our campus community that Bridget is in Portland, So right now it is 6:30 for her, and Jackie is in Phoenix, and so it's 7:30 for her. And they both told me they are not morning people. They don't talk before 9 o'clock. I told them it's 9 o'clock here, so that worked for us. And so again, it's great to have you both, not only as national experts, as friends. And so I want us to just dive in and have a conversation about some topics that are really near and dear to the work we're doing at NKU, and really to tap into your expertise about how we can move some of these efforts forward. So Bridget, I'll start with you. A number of outlets have stated that the future of higher education is uncertain, and especially in the aftermath of COVID. What are your thoughts on these concerns, and do you think they're legitimate?
So first, thanks for having me. And yes, caffeine is doing what I'd like to call the most right now for me. And it's so nice to be on the Friends of Andy panel. So that is the unique distinction. That is why I'm getting up. I'm here at 6:30 in the morning. It's only for Friends of Andy panels. So in terms of the future of higher education, I am incredibly optimistic. I think that if you saw what happened last week, and if you are looking at the state of our country, there is no higher education is critical in a way that it has, like, the purpose of higher education is originally the preservation of democracy. There could be no higher calling in this exact moment, but I also would say that in the midst of COVID, what I have seen is higher education go through tremendous growth and evolution, and I think that we are probably our best. It doesn't feel like it. It feels pretty terrible, but I think that right now, the resilience of our students is on full display. The creativity, the innovation, and the selflessness of our faculty, our staff, and our administrators is on full display. And the leadership of higher education presidents and chancellors is the best it's ever been, because they have risen to the task. I think that there had been, decades of, leadership is, leadership, right? And, the daily challenges, and to some degree, leading an institution, it didn't feel like battle, and it feels like battle right now. And I feel like we have, that I'm seeing presidents, while they are exhausted, they have discovered a new bench of resilience themselves. And I think that the question is, the real challenge for higher education, for us to be able to step up, especially for the people who have been affected by COVID and everything that's happening, is can we expand the broad participation to really include adults and those with some college and no degree? Can we really step up to that challenge? Like, we've been talking about it for a really long time. And I feel like right now, we finally figured out that maybe not every class needs to be in person, and maybe we can learn new skills a lot faster than we said we could. And that technology isn't as scary, and in fact can be a weapon that we can wield to drive learning and to drive impact in a way that we didn't anticipate. So I just want to make sure that we set ourselves up that in the next few months, we can actually look ourselves in the mirror and think, what should always be remote and what should never be remote. We should get very clear about that on the tail end of this. And we should figure out how we can really map out the things that we need to achieve that are most critical, and leverage all of the insights and the experience and the failure and the lessons from this past year. So I think naysayers, to be fair, I'm like obviously a fan of higher ed. So I don't know if I could be neutral on that one.
Well, thank you for that, Bridget. And following up on that, you're a big fan of higher education, and you get an opportunity to work with a lot of different institutions. And so the next question is, who are the institutions outside of the Georgia states that are emerging as leaders in student success? And what are the hard decisions they have had to make to support their success efforts?
Well, I'm partial to 11 of them in particular, but I would also say that you have some standouts like Middle Tennessee that has fully scaled and replicated Georgia State's model from a regional public institution. So if you're looking for examples that are going to actually be, to some degree close to your front yard, and show that, it's not just the examples that the mentor can do. It's not just, who's already done it. I think what's most interesting is whether or not it can be scaled, it can be replicated, and in an environment that's different, in a culture that's different, and with a student population that's different, which I don't really believe that anyone's serving different students. I think that's always a story we tell ourselves. But I think Middle Tennessee, I think UMBC, I think North Carolina A&T, I think that there are, so when I'm thinking about not, the traditional UIA institutions, but yeah, I think that for a long time, that's the reason why the Alliance formed, is that ASU, UC Riverside, Oregon State, Michigan State, Ohio State, Iowa State, University of Central Florida, and, Purdue, they were already leading. And so the question that we were trying to answer with our work was, can people who are leading in various different ways, can they actually help each other, take their ideas, evolve them, adapt them, and implement them? And so that's a lot of what we do, but we're not alone. And I would say that this work is possible. It's possible at NKU. And it's really just a matter of, are you going to get clear about actually what's going on now and what your current situation is before you jump to the shiny objects of student success innovation. We have this tendency to always be trying to be busy and to just, adopt ideas that we see others doing, but we don't ever take the time to look in the mirror and figure out, where are we? What are our students struggling with, and what are their biggest challenges, and what are the impediments that we could actually fix today if we just spend some time? So I think intentionality is probably the most important thing at this point.
Thank you for that, Bridget. So pivoting over to Jackie. Jackie, the questions, and there's a couple of questions here I have for you. First, what is the 60-year curriculum? And then can you explain the universal learning educational model? And then how can we incorporate this model at NKU? So it's 3 questions in one.
Great, thanks everyone. Thanks for having me, and good morning to Andy and Bridget and all of the colleagues on the line. So the 60-year curriculum is a phrase that was coined by a dean of continuing education at UC Irvine, and it refers to the 6 decades of employment. Sounds a little daunting when you think about it like that many of us will go through. And although higher education used to prepare individuals for one career that they might have for many, many years, now continuing educators, really at the forefront of this particular concept, note that the nature and role of higher education needs to evolve, because as we prepare for 60 years of employment that will be continuously changing, that means we really need 60 years of continuous and lifelong education. And right now, higher education is primarily oriented around delivering degrees, and those degrees are offered in 2 to 4 year periods. And so at the same time that this 60-year curriculum concept was developing, ASU was working on launching a new unit of its enterprise called the Learning Enterprise, which is grounded in this concept of universal learning. So it was birthed in part in response to this idea of universal basic income, which in some instances can be very helpful in communities, but our assessment is that not only do individuals need access to income, they need universal access to learning opportunities, so that as their job opportunities evolve and as the economy evolves, they can drop in and out of education. And so what we are looking at ASU is how to develop new on-ramps and off-ramps, and how to develop new, quote, products or offerings that are different from just degree programs. So your final point was, how do we begin to incorporate some of this at NKU? And I was looking at your strategic plan, and it seems like there are some foundational elements in some of your pillars. In particular, I noted that in the completion pillar, you're already looking at how to modularize your learning pathways and how to earn credentials along the degree pathway. That really is the foundation of figuring out new ways to incorporate learners who might not currently be part of your system. So really at the root of all of this is realizing that the way in which we have traditionally engaged learners through a recruitment process, a freshman orientation, a series of courses, and a graduation as the entire life cycle of a student journey, we now need to dramatically broaden that life cycle. And many of the founders of this work would say to a 60-year purview that actually begins after you get that degree. And so there are many ways to think about how to, again, engage continuing ed programs and how to leverage those modularized learning pathways as the foundation for this work.
Thank you for that, Jackie. And so, following up on that, as we've mentioned, and it's been pretty consistent in the first panel, at the beginning of this panel, NKU is a student-centered university. And as we continue to promote lifelong learning, what tips would you have for making sure that we keep students at the center of all of our efforts?
So one of my former colleagues from my time working in university initiatives is wrapping up his doctoral dissertation, and his name is Mike Meany. And one of the primary pieces of scholarship that he has been advancing is along this concept of what he calls hegemonic design bias. And I wanted to bring that up here and point out an area where I think ASU still has some room for improvement. And so we launched our version of MOOCs, or open scale courses, and we realized that a lot of the data we were gathering about the success of those courses was based on who was actually completing the courses. And as many of us know, those who tend to complete MOOCs already have a bachelor's degree or already have a set of experiences that might better equip them to complete the courses. So if you think about it, we developed these open scale courses in order to reach the hardest to reach students. But then when we were evaluating the success of those programs, we were measuring and receiving feedback from those who completed it. And this would, as the soon-to-be Dr. Meany would say, exacerbates and enables a hegemonic design bias, in that the data we get from those who have completed it informs the iterative approach that we take to refining the course, and this creates a loop. And those hard to reach students who dropped out of the course are sometimes hard to then reach and follow up with to find out why they dropped out. So how do you actually refine courses for the hardest to reach students that you serve? And so the challenge that I would offer, and where I think there is a lot of opportunity for universities to innovate and to emerge as leaders, is figuring out how to go beyond the often cursory teacher evaluation that students complete at the end of the semester, and really dive into making every single time a course is offered, degree and non-degree, an opportunity to tie in to what students really need to improve the course. And so I think there's really a robust measurement and evaluation challenge ahead for many of us as we work to refine how we become truly student-centered, and we figure out the ways to reach the students whose input matters most.
Thank you for that, Jackie. Bridget, going back to you, right now, it's been a reoccurring theme that budgets are an issue in higher education. And so we don't have infinite resources. In your opinion, right now, where should, an institution like NKU, a regional institution, be investing?
I mean, first off, I would just say, I don't think anyone has money to invest right now, right? So I think investing in taking care of your people and taking care of your current students is probably the best that we're going to do at the moment. If we're talking about in the future, if some imaginary pot of money were to come forward, I would look at an institution, and the first thing, I mean, you and I talked about this, is that I think that try and serve the community that you're in. Try and actually get a sense of the regional economic data and get a sense of exactly how hard people have been hit. I think we have a new population of prospective students, and they are our alumni, and they are the people who came and didn't get a degree, and they're the people who are going to need to retool, reinvent, and figure out who they're going to be in a new digital economy. And I don't think that creating a new MBA program is the answer. And I don't think a new EDD program or any of the fancy big box things that we have traditionally fallen upon, which can often just be a cash grab. Like, we need to actually be creating things that are meeting people where they are. So it's going to be small things. It's going to be like modular small courses. It's going to be tiny like trainings and boot camps and things that maybe someone only needs to learn digital marketing now because they had to figure out how to convert their in-person business into a digital into an online business, or maybe they're trying to figure out funnels, or they're trying to figure out like things that you have the experts in your faculty. We just too often, we don't always tap them to play this role because we always look for a traditional traditional package like isomorphism. Like we think it has to be a degree. We think it has to be a certain like size, and it has to be what other people have offered. But I would say, what do the people in Northern Kentucky who have been affected by this challenging moment, where I would invest in giving people time to actually have empathy conversations, to have interviews, to talk to people and get a sense of what's going on. But, you know, I would also have my people who work at my institution, I would give them a little bit of time to actually look at, you know, what are we currently offering that frankly needs to be shelved because that industry doesn't exist anymore, or because those jobs have, like, we need to get about the business of shifting what we're offering to meet the moment. And I think that you have all the smart people. I just genuinely believe that the smart people are in higher education. They're already on your staff, they're your faculty, your administrators, and I would create space for people to have those kinds of conversations about, you know what, we saw this industry that no longer is existing. We've seen this shut down, et cetera. We're hearing more and more about what's happening. We've been offering a program that was specifically created for that employer. They don't exist anymore. Let's how could we repurpose some of the elements of that curriculum to create something that actually meets the needs of those who we're talking to that have actually been affected by this, right? So it's almost like a sifting through and seeing kind of like, who do we need to be in this moment? And I would definitely focus on the people in your area. I mean, I think this idea that like this is the moment for a big power grab of like, we're going to launch an online university and like like everyone's going to be Southern New Hampshire, like that's not realistic. And I think that right now we now know what good online feels like because we've all felt bad online, right? Like in every case. So I think that the thing I would do is really rise to the moment by meeting the needs of the people in your community. And they might not be the needs that you think that you want to serve, and they might not be the things that you that feel like they are, you know, what a traditional institution would do. Well, what higher ed needs to do right now is evolve and adapt, and we've just proven to ourselves that we can change quickly, that we're adaptable, and that we're nimble. And so I think we should just use those skills to meet the needs of Northern Kentuckians.
Thank you for that, Bridget. And so, Jackie, pivoting to you, you know, Bridget just talked about meeting the needs of Northern Kentucky and the Northern Kentucky region. How do we prepare our students for the evolving, you know, expectations of employers within the region and for the evolving economy?
So this theme of the 60-year curriculum and the idea that you need to have a variety of on-ramps and off-ramps, I would say the first piece to that is making sure that your alum of your degree-seeking programs know that NKU is a place where they can return for continuing education, where they can return to connect with the professors that they previously engaged with to continue to evolve. And so there may be an existing group of continuing ed and professional education courses, and the idea would be this might be an area of opportunity for growth, to know that you don't have to prepare, you don't have to get all of your learning in just a 4-year period. I think about, we run a scholarship program called the MasterCard Foundation Scholarship Program for students from Sub-Saharan Africa. And I was interacting with a group of students that were all trying to triple major, because they said when they returned home, they were not sure what the lifelong learning opportunities would be for them. And this idea that get all your learning in now before you get your undergraduate degree so that you can then have your 60 years of career doesn't really make sense. And so in that instance, we worked on a lifelong learning strategy for those scholarship recipients to return, and again, have various on-ramps and off-ramps, not all of them credit-bearing offerings, but thinking out about ways where the learners have an opportunity to recognize where they need to reskill or upskill. And I would say that the second part to that, again, recognizing when you need to reskill or upskill, requires that you have an ability to assess your own competencies. So I understand, of course, why in higher education professors give out the grades, but that means that students are passive in their own assessment of where they are in their learning journey. And so making sure that students are confident in how they both speak to employers about the skills that they possess, but then also can have the skills to do their own self-reflection. So if we think about how in the university setting, we might have an academic advisor, a career advisor, a professor that we turn to, then when we're in the working world, we need to actually be able to rely on ourselves to figure out the best way forward. And so we start to see some of this when we ask students to complete a portfolio, for example, where they are reflecting on their own. I think there is much, much more that we could do to enable students to figure out how to give themselves their own grades, but also realize that their learning journey is not static. So the grade they receive in a marketing course does not define their marketing ability. And then once they're no longer in that classroom setting, how do they know the additional competencies that they need to make? So in the same way that when we design a major map, we design the competencies for that program. Well, then what are the competencies that we expect them to have as a professional moving forward? And can we create benchmarks for students, learners? And I'll back up and say, we tend to use at ASU the term students for those who are degree seeking enrolled with us. And then they become learners once they are outside of that degree program. So once they are a learner coming back and forth, dipping in and out, what are we using to help them benchmark their progress towards their goals?
That was great, Jackie, and I love the part about making sure that our students become active in the learning process. And so, you talked a lot about not only the classroom but that transition to work. And so, a big issue that we're dealing with nationally right now and on our campuses is what the expectations of students, when they're coming to the university, and what's their expectations, what they'll leave with. And so, Bridget, I asked you a really broad, open-ended question, but what do students want? What do they expect from universities?
I think they want these institutions to help them achieve their full potential and to care about them and to not act like a big business who they are just a means to an end. So my background, I grew up in poverty in rural Montana and I barely stumbled to college. And one of the things that really struck me and stays with me is that I remember that I showed up on campus and here I was, I'd taken out like a $5,000 student loan. It's the most money I'd ever seen in my life, right? Like it's very intimidating. I grew up in a family with like less than $20,000 a year in income. And I just remember like, I show up on campus, taking out this massive loan for this thing. This is the most expensive purchase of my life. And I expected that, and these people, like they have PhDs, they have fancy titles in front of their names. I expected, and I think students expect, that the grown-ups or the people who are working at institutions are paying attention. I expected that just like if you make a massive purchase, that of course someone's going to be like, if I get off track, they're going to nudge me in the right direction. They're going to like just the modicum of care, right? And I discovered nobody was really paying attention, that I had paid my tuition and I took really interesting classes that had nothing to do with my program of study and nobody was watching. And I end up, my story works out. It's the best case scenario, but it took me 7 years and I graduated with like more than $50,000 in student loans and 50 credits that I didn't need. Right. So I'm just saying that I think students expect that we figure out how to run an institution so that we can actually be paying attention, that we can be playing offense instead of defense. Like too often the last conversation we have with students is they're walking out the door and they're not coming back and it's too late. And we're smart people. We have systems that are gathering data and insights, and we have years, we have decades of experience with students. We have all this past data that show us what the tripwires are that stop a student. We know, we should be smart enough to know that doing this series of things, that is a red flag, and that we flag on the field, right? Like let's intervene. But too often what we do is we just like, okay, well, we know that we lose students when they do these things. That's too bad. We got to get back to, try and find more students. And that's insane. So students expect that we actually pay attention and that we understand that this is a massive purchase and this is a huge investment for their life. And so I know that it's complicated, but we've watched institutions do this. You can restructure your campus and you can really narrow how you pay attention and focus in on the things that historically are red flags. You can reorient your institution so that you're guarding those things and you're anticipating and you're ready that if a student misses an advising appointment, that if a student registers for the wrong classes, that if a student has, if they owe a balance and they miss a payment, like you should know that's a signal. The student is saying, I need help. Instead of what we do right now is just too often we just like, well, they got to get that figured out, but I got to get back to my job, right? So I think that I would say that students want to know that we're paying attention, that we're willing to do the hard thing, because it is a hard thing to figure out how to do all this stuff. I get it, but that students know that somebody's watching and that somebody has their back. And I think with faculty, we know that the only thing that's really like statistically significant, proven empirically to actually help a student complete is just the perception that they matter, that a faculty member cares about their success. And that's it. Like, it's crazy that after all this time in higher ed, like that's the one thing we know is actually what matters. If you look at like all the high impact practices, it's just like a student knowing that you care. So I would say that's, we got nowhere to go but up from here, but that's what students want. They want to achieve their full potential and they want to know we have their back and that, that we actually care and we're paying attention.
Bridget, I appreciate that. And one of the things you touched on, this kind of notion, idea of faculty caring. And so, I can speak for the faculty at NKU. This is probably the most caring group of faculty I've ever encountered in my professional career. And so, that's one area that I know we excel and will continue to excel. But you touched on one thing, and I want to dive a little deeper, this idea of a tripwire. And so you and I had a really good conversation offline about tripwires and how we assess them. But, for instance, we talked about holes being a potential tripwire. And if you can kind of just talk through so the audience can understand what you mean by tripwire and how we look at those.
Yeah, so I frequently am asked by campuses, come in and help us figure out like, what do we need to do? And then, we hear so-and-so is doing analytics, we hear chatbots, we hear this, and it's like, whoa, pump the brakes. Do you even know what the top 10 indicators of students about to drop out are? And almost every time people say, oh yeah, we know. Okay, what is it? It's financial. That's not a tripwire. A tripwire is something that is an actual indicator, something that that happens inside your institution. It is an action that there's an alert inside your campus. So like I said, it's like you miss an advising appointment, you register for the wrong classes. Like these are things that actually happen in our system and we could actually be paying attention to. But you should know what those top 10 things are, and most campuses don't. I realize it's complicated, but like, this is the thing, this is the whole purpose of analytics, right? You should know what those top 10 things are. And then you want to reorient how you spend your time so that you are actually anticipating that one of those things is going to be tripped, that you're looking the second it happens, that you intervene before the student even knows they have a problem. That's, you want to know the secret to Georgia State? That's it. They literally, like, every Monday they get a report of the students, the students who have hit one of the tripwires. They have 800 indicators in their campus, and they deploy 3,000 advising hours immediately. They call the student in, they call the student, they deal with it before the student doesn't know that that's a red flag, right? So if yours is holds, I would say one of the things about financial aid holds is that we have these set up, these are set up for like the administrator. They're not set up to help actually achieve an outcome with the student. And I always ask, like, okay, so have you mapped out all your financial aid holds? Most people don't know all the holds that exist on their campus. And the other thing is, who gets to set holds and how you set them and what the structure of a hold is. That's like the Wild West. Most campuses do not know like what exists. And it turns out that like most people could set up a financial aid hold, which means even we don't know what the holds could trip a student up. So of course a student doesn't know. And we're expecting them to be able to navigate this, like all these booby traps that are being laid for them that are about $100. We need to ask ourselves a hard question of if it isn't worth us losing a student, it probably shouldn't have a hold. I know that's taboo, but like I'm saying, like you have $100 on your account. We've already seen historically that students who owe $100 on their account, like, but they don't have that $100. I guess I'm not going to register for classes this next term. Is it worth it? We have to be more creative. We are smart people. And I feel like you have the smart people who are like, let's brainstorm. What does an intervention look like that would actually result in the outcome we want? Yes, we want them to pay that hold. But I mean, oftentimes I see students dropping out for imaginary money, which is they got a parking ticket and then they got a late fee upon a late fee upon a late fee. That's imaginary money. Like they didn't actually steal that money from the institution. And yet we're going to say that student should just not, like, we're just going to let them walk out the door and never come back for that. We have to be much more intentional about evaluating all those different things. So when I say tripwire, that's what I mean. Like it literally, it trips them up, and it's ours to guard. And we have to set our folks up so that they can anticipate. And one of the ways you do that, like the other question I always ask is like, can I talk to one of your advisors? And I ask advisors, like, how many screens do you have to look at when you first meet a student before you can diagnose the problem? Because when I talk to academic advisors, which is like one of the most important jobs at the institution, and they say things like, I have, 6 to 8 screens I have to get through, they have a 30-minute appointment. In 30 minutes, they have to get through 6 to 8 screens and figure out what's wrong with the student and then try and fix it. Like that's essentially saying they're never going to get there. So we have to actually design our work around the people who are, like in my mind, the advisor is somewhat the client for analytics, right? Like it has, if they don't say like, yeah, actually our EAB advising, or like our dashboard, it works for me, and they've taken my input and my feedback, and it gives me everything I need to act quickly. If they don't say that, then I would push on the consultants, because you got to get there, because those are the people. If you want to help students, you got to help advisors, and you got to help faculty as well. Faculty should be able to have access to the kind of data they need to know if they have a crisis in their classroom, if they have a student who it's a small intervention that would actually make a difference. So yeah, those. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk on holds.
Thank you for that, Bridget. And so, continue the conversation. Jackie, one of the things that's, national, regional, all institutions are trying to think about how they can be more entrepreneurial. And so you talk about a term in the 60-year curriculum of being intrapreneurial or entrepreneurship. How can we promote that type of thinking at NKU?
Thanks. So intrapreneurship has to do with using entrepreneurial skills within the context of an institution. So the individual who is so fired up about data and analytics within an advising program, for example, who could potentially have a skill set to start their own company focused on these efforts, but then chooses instead to work within the context of their institution to develop a data dashboard or to help change the way student advising is structured, would be an intrapreneur. And in the ASU context, one way in which we helped cultivate generations of intrapreneurs, or cohorts after cohorts of entrepreneurs, was through something called the University Innovation Fellowship, which I directed for many years. And this program helped create a pathway for individuals who demonstrate a propensity for entrepreneurship, creativity, and use of design thinking skills. And in the same way that Teach for America allows individuals an entry point into teaching, the University Innovation Fellowship allows individuals an entry point into higher education, which looks different than pursuing a faculty route, and looks different than pursuing a traditional administrator route, in that during the fellowship, you get exposure to a pan-university wide set of services, units, et cetera, so that you can become, over the course of the 13-month experience, someone who has a macro level view of what's going on. And I would say that oftentimes, whether it be a faculty member who's within a particular discipline, or an expert who spends a career working within a particular area, such as financial aid or student services, etc., you may become siloed in a particular area. But many of these bold goals that we have related to student success require a more macro level understanding of the institution. And so intrapreneurs, I think, are cultivated at an institution because they have been given training, exposure to pan-university wide issues, and people. But then also the third piece I would say is a phrase that I hear Michael Crow use a lot, which is cover, meaning the support from leaders to be troublemakers. Entrepreneurs are not playing by the rules. Entrepreneurs are trying to break the current systems, so to speak. They're not trying to set fires and leave them in their wake. But entrepreneurs are going to end up being the folks who call you and email you and do create a little bit more work along the way. That's the nature. And so the campus community has to embrace that these troublemakers are out there and has to create a welcoming environment. Now, the flip side to that is when entrepreneurs do the work that they do, they need to have some early wins. They need to demonstrate their value. They need to be excellent colleagues, and they need to be motivated by whether it be student success or whatever problem it is that they were meant to solve. It is not about their path, and it's not about them getting to choose which problems to work on. And so, and there's a balance. And I would say finally that entrepreneurs on a campus don't need to come out of a particular fellowship program. I use that just as an example. From what I'm hearing from you and from your bold vision of your president, many of them likely are all over your campus. What I'm encouraging you to think about is, how are they brought together? How are they upskilled over time? How are they empowered? And are there individuals who currently are not in a role where they are able to do some troublemaking and changing and offering suggestions, but they have the ideas and the capacity to do it? So how are we opening up those opportunities for individuals who have a propensity to be more entrepreneurial?
Thank you, Jackie. It was great. And so last question, in the interest of time, Bridget, I'm going to give you 30 seconds on this one. And it definitely could warrant a lot more time. You know, when we talk about student success, there's a big focus on our advisors, on a lot of different staff, on coordinated care. But how can we make sure that faculty are always central to our student success efforts? And I know it's probably a tough question to answer in 30 seconds, but I know you can try it.
I think one of the big things we have to recognize is the one place that all students go is the classroom. Imaginary, like not imaginary, but virtual or not, right? And so we have to position that faculty are the ones who are likely going to be able to give the dose of the intervention and the support and the nudge. And I think that we have to think of faculty as also somewhat the client that we have to serve in order to equip them to do that. So for instance, if you're talking about like improving college to career outcomes, I think that having career services professionals kind of serve as instructional designers to support faculty, integrating career readiness into their curriculum, into their syllabus, like that's one way of doing it, is treat the faculty, give them what they need, because they're the ones who are actually going to be the ones interacting with the student. They're going to be the ones who have that relationship. I think faculty and academic advisors, they're our only hope in terms of being able to actually intervene. So what role do they play? They play often they play every role. I think also we're asking them to step up in ways that are unrealistic in terms of addressing some of the mental health challenges that none of us are really prepared to do. So we have to think of them as the client in terms of what kind of training and education and support can we provide. I don't know if that was 30 seconds.
It was a little bit more, but I'll give you a pass. I appreciate it. This has been a great conversation, both Jackie and Bridget. The information you provided us is extremely valuable to our campus, and you're both experts in your fields. As a friend, I want to say I thank you for this favor. We hope we can have you out in person, and we'll try to have you out in person at some point in the future. But you all, thank you for the information. Great conversation. So at this point, we are going to pivot over to Lauren Goodwin, who is our SGA president, and Dr. Eddie Howard, the new Vice President for Student Affairs.
Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
I'm here with Dr. Eddie Howard, who has just been brought on as our new Vice President of Student Affairs.
You muted, Lauren.
Man, that was so good too. I'm just kidding. But I was just saying that I'm here with our new Vice President of Student Affairs, Dr. Eddie Howard. Dr. Howard, we're so excited to have you here.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Good. So all of our campus is definitely excited to get to know you more. And we all know that's going to be a little difficult during this virtual format. So we have some questions for you if you're ready
I
to
think
try
I'm
to get
ready.
to know you. Perfect. Okay, so one of the things that I think we're all struggling with right now is this virtual format. So what is the hardest part about working virtually for you?
For me, I think it's the screen fatigue that a lot of students are dealing with. Like, you go from meeting to meeting to meeting, and that's happened since COVID started. And then trying to juggle, sometimes you still have those face-to-face interactions. And sometimes you can plan your virtual meeting, and then you still got to go to a face-to-face meeting. And every now and then I don't make it. So that's the difficult part of, I think, of this particular process.
What's the best piece of advice you've ever been given?
Well, I think early in my career, I was grappling with this concept of a decision that was made by someone that was higher up in the division, and one of my colleagues came to me and said, and I've used this from this point on, is she said to me, Eddie, you need to focus on the things that are in your circle of influence and not in your circle of concern. And so I have ever since that, I've really focused on the things that I have the power to change and the things that I don't have. I mean, I'm concerned about those items, but I don't have anything that I can do about it because I don't have either the talent or the power or the ability to make any change there. But I can focus on the things that are in my circle of influence.
That's awesome. So my next question is, if you had to delete all but 3 apps from your phone, what 3 apps would you keep?
Well, first I gotta get my kids to help me get the apps on my phone, and then secondly, I think I don't even know how I would begin to delete them. But the 3 that I would keep, I thought about this long and hard, and I was thinking, okay, I gotta have my maps because I gotta know where I'm going because I use my maps all the time. I need to have my email, which is so critical for me to have, and I think the last piece is my calendar. Like I gotta have right now. I have this calendar app and I'm lost if I don't know what I'm doing. So those would be my 3.
That's interesting. When I posed that question, I kind of tried to think through my answer, and maps didn't even cross my mind. But then when I saw you say that, I was like, you're right. I could not do without that. So what is one thing that we would never guess about you?
All right. So the one thing I think you'd never guess about me is probably, oh, let me see. I think I was trying to get that one confused. The other question you asked me is that as a child that I really, really wanted to seriously be Matt Dillon. And I don't know if you probably never saw Gunsmoke, right? But I was totally like, he was my hero. And as a child, I had a pony. And so I was one of the only Black kids in my area with a pony. And so I could see myself being Matt Dillon, and that's what I wanted to do.
I love it. What was your pony's name?
Dusty.
Dusty. Yes, perfect. Okay, I have to ask the number 1 student question, and that is, what is your Starbucks order?
Well, see, my Starbucks order is probably not coffee. My order would be hot chocolate with soy and whipped cream.
I like it. It's always good to mix it up,
That's right.
What current fact about your life would impress your 5-year-old self the most?
Probably that folks are calling me Dr. Howard. I don't think I saw that. I never would have thought that that's probably how my life would end. And probably even for me, I was first generation. The only person I knew in my family had ever been to college was a second cousin. So, I think the life I live today is probably something I never could have predicted.
All right, and then I have one last question that I have to ask because it's the reason we're all here. It's the reason you're here. But what is your philosophy on student success?
Well, my philosophy on student success really is really about, I was listening to Dr. Burns talk about, what we should be doing as folks that work in higher education with our students. And I think she's 100% correct. And that's the way I think that I lead. I think students come here as a result of financial aid or whatever, and they're first generation like me. And like her, I came from an environment where college wasn't discussed. And so I get very passionate about success and what we can do to help our students succeed. If I had my vision, or if I had the ability, I think our division should be the Division of Student Experience. And I said that when I interviewed, because I think within the student experience, we can help students succeed. It's really, really important for us to understand every aspect of the student experience. One of the things that I use as a tagline a lot, and it's not just me trying to come up with a clever kind of motto that I use, is I try to create the best experience that's humanly possible. Because within creating the best experience for humanly possible, you have to make sure that that is, no matter what type of student it is, that if your goal is to do that, then you're going to be attentive to all the needs of all of our students, right? It's not going to matter if they're a student of color, if they're a student with disability, if they're a student from the LGBTQ community. You're going to be focused on helping that student create the best experience that's humanly possible. So, and within the student experience, I think we all can get to the table to help a student succeed. No student comes to the university to fail. Every student comes here to succeed. And they want us to help them and guide them and get them there. And I believe, like Dr. Burns had talked about, is this important piece of the financial, impact that they have. They borrow this money and they leave here sometimes with a great deal of debt. And it's our responsibility to make sure they're getting what they pay for. So I get really passionate about helping students succeed from that vein, because I think it's really, really important that we do the best that we can do to create the best experience that's humanly possible for our students.
Yeah, I love that idea of the student experience. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Howard. I know myself and the rest of our campus look forward to getting to know you more throughout the rest of this semester and in the coming years. And now we'd just like to turn it back over to President Vidia.
Thank you so much, Lauren. And of course, a warm welcome to Eddie. It's, I think, day 15 or something for him. So I'm so glad you're part of the team. And we've all learned so much in this past 90 minutes. What an inspirational Student Success Summit. And again, I want to thank everyone involved in getting this ready and in working hard behind the scenes. I know I learned several new things today. Certainly, most recently about Eddie and his looking up to Matt Dillon. Now, I don't know if I'd known that before the interview process, Eddie. I'm not sure if this would have quite worked out, but I'm just kidding, of course. We are so glad that you're here and, of course, focusing on student success. Let me just thank Andy for what we found out. Of course, he has wonderful friends that are willing to wake up bright and early to come and join us. Andy, thank you so much for bringing on board Jacqueline and Bridget Burns to speak to us. Just a tremendous conversation, so inspiring to learn so many different things, the 60-year curriculum. The fundamental aspect of knowing that students, what the students want most is that we care, and how important that is. So I think it gave us some great insights. I know I learned a lot, and we're happy to have further conversations. My understanding is that there are questions we have for either of them. We can funnel them through Andy and maybe get some good responses from them as well. And then finally, Ryan and the CARE panel, I want to thank all of you for taking the time and sharing your stories, your journey. Throughout these past 10 months, I've been fortunate to have been able to connect with various individuals, again through Zoom, to just find out how folks are doing and how they're coping and what can we be doing more to help them, support them. But just hearing the different stories, from whether it's from Abdullah or Gannon or Amy Clark, or our Duncan, our student, but also the coach of our esports team, Bill Moulton, and what they're doing in facilities, and Mackenzie and Jennifer, our wonderful students. Just hearing them is so inspiring. And again, it's so heartwarming for us to know. And what a way to start the academic year, the spring semester, exemplifying this notion of care. And the acronym is there, but it's something I know that lives forever. We will continue that journey together. As one of the panelists pointed out, we've struggled together, and we've come together, and we'll keep that force going forward. And I'm so encouraged and inspired by the stories that you've shared, especially, of course, our students, and how much of an impact that means. And to all of you, I'm so incredibly proud. I've said this, I know, before, but hearing the stories firsthand, and there are many more from the participants as well. Again, I want to wish you a wonderful semester, continued success through this year. Please keep safe as we continue on this journey. And I sincerely hope there is some light at the end of the tunnel, that I'll be able to get a chance to, we all will be able to get a chance to be back on campus and interacting with each other. I know we've all missed that as well. So have a great weekend as well. Thank you for joining us. And it's always good to start off the year with such great spirit and enthusiasm. Goodbye.